All right. So, guys, as a reminder, I won't see you tomorrow because it's SAT, PSAT day. So that's why I'm reminding you of this now. This is that progress check, the thing we did on College Board. I gave you a day in class to work on it. If you didn't finish it then, just make sure you finish it. It's due tomorrow night at midnight. So I won't see you tomorrow to remind you. A lot of you finished it already, but Roger? You can get them all wrong and still get full credit. Yeah, but it should tell you the answer right when you do it. Yeah. Guys, you can get you can get a calculator out, but if you're wanting to do it by tomorrow, you need to get on it because you go on Canvas to the announcements. There's an announcement. It says graphing calculators. In that announcement is the form. You just fill it out. And then once you fill it out, you go to see her. Okay, I'm recording. So listen, we're finishing up section 2.1 today, Friday. A lot of you were out. Hopefully you watched the video because you might be a little lost because there's a lot of similarities between what we did on Friday and what we're doing today. So if you haven't had a chance to, find some time to do that. So on Friday, we learned about arithmetic sequences. Today, we're doing geometric. There's a lot of similarities. It's a patterned set of numbers is what a sequence is. And if you remember on Friday, arithmetic was we're adding the same number as we go left to right. In geometric, we're multiplying the same number as we go left to right. So here's a geometric sequence, and there's something called a common ratio, or R, which is what we're multiplying by as we go left to right. And just like on Friday, sometimes you can do it just mental math, right? I think we can all look at this and say what we're multiplying by is what? 2. So R is 2, right? 4 times 2, 8 times 2. But remember, there's a way to test it if you couldn't tell, and that's going in reverse and using the opposite operation. So if we multiply left to right, you divide, if you multiply left to right, you would divide right to left. So if I wanted to test it, I could say 8 divided by 4 and 16 divided by 8 and so on. And you can see you get 2 when you do that, so that made my R 2, right? The testing, whenever I write that, that's something I'm actually doing on my calculator. I wouldn't need to see that work, okay? So we'll talk about that more in a second. Let's look at some formulas. The general form, we will get to that in another section. We don't really use it in this. We don't use it at all in this section. If you remember, on Friday, we had something called an explicit formula, and then when you simplified it, it looked like the other one. There's no simplifying in these. These are kind of nice. The geometric explicit formula, which I'm going to show you right now, once you plug the numbers in, that's it. You don't have to do any simplifying. There's not like a distributive property or anything like that. And this one right here, this is going to be your explicit formula right here. And you might notice, kind of cutesy, they use G sub n and G sub k instead of A sub n and A sub k. G just stands for geometric, but we all kind of just use A anyway. You'll see the way I do it. I just use A for both formulas. It means the same as G, and we're going to break that formula down more in a second. So remember, A sub n and A sub k, those sub numbers match the numbers here, n and k, just like they did on Friday's formula. And so we'll work with that more in a second. Same with this one. The geometric mean is another really valuable formula you'll be using. And what it is if you're trying to find B, and you don't have B, but you have A and C. So you have two outside numbers and you want to find the one in the middle, you use the geometric mean formula. It's used to find a middle number. So you just multiply A times C and do the square root of it. That will get you the B value. And I'll show you that too in a minute. We'll come back to that. Our first example is just like the first example we did on Friday. Determine whether each sequence is geometric. If it is, find the R. Okay, so are we multiplying by the same number as we go left to right here? Yeah, so this is geometric, and R is 2, right? If you can't tell by looking at it, you're going to have to pick up your calculator or use your brain, doesn't matter, to do some test numbers. So that would be 6 over 3. Does that equal 12 over 6? Does that equal 24 over 12? In all of those situations, we get 2 So that's why, yes, it's geometric, R is 2. This purple does not have to be shown, okay? You can do it in your head or do it in the calculator. How about the next one? Are we multiplying by the same number as we go left to right here? Yeah. What is that number? -3. How about C? No, because to get 5, I would multiply 1, right? 1 times 5 is 5, but 5 times 5 is not 9. It would be 25 there. So nope, this one is not geometric. It has to multiply. On Friday, it was add. And then here, maybe you don't know. Maybe you can't tell what it is. Maybe you need to just pick up your calculator and see, do these equal each other? It's -1/4. You said -4. It's -1/4. You can write it as that or that, either way. If the numbers are getting smaller, Zach, you're not multiplying by 4. You'd be getting bigger numbers. Okay, but you're finding what you're multiplying by. I see what you're saying, yeah. So 48 times -1/4, -12 times. It's what multiplies as we go left to right. Okay, it's multiplication. All right, good. Next example on the next page. What are you doing, everyone? I was doing that. Okay, so in this example 10 here at the top, it says to find a sub 6 and a sub n for the geometric sequence. So they give you the geometric sequence. It's not is it or is it not. It's just here is one. Now I want you to find the 6th term and the a sub nth term. Guys, when you see that, a sub n, that just is the explicit formula, okay? A sub n means the explicit formula. And you have a homework problem where it says find a sub n. And everyone asks me, what does that mean? It just means find the formula. So if you remember, anytime we're writing the explicit formula, we leave n blank or empty. So let's revisit what the geometric sequence explicit formula is. I'm going to write it here. So a sub n equals a sub k, and I like to use parentheses for my r, to the n minus k. So remember, those sub numbers n and k match what these numbers here are. These two numbers here are the subscript numbers, the little numbers below. Okay, so let's go ahead and write the explicit formula, which is a sub n. So a sub n equals, now you can use any term you want here. A sub k is open. You can use any that you want. Just like we said this on Friday, I like to use the first number I would say I'm boring. So I used a sub 1, right? That's a sub 1 I used right there. What is the r in this problem? -5, right? That's what I'm multiplying by. And then n, always leave n empty in the explicit formula, minus k would be 1. Since I used the first term, I would put 1 there. Guys, remember, you could have used -15 in place of the 3. You could have put a 75 in place of 3. It doesn't matter which one you use. That would just change the k value. So if I use the second term, this would be 2 right here. If I use 75, this would be a 3. 3 times -5 gives me -15. Remember how we found the r in the other one? We had 6 divided by 3, 12 divided by 6. -15 divided by 3 is -5. Okay? So now we can use that to find the 6th term. So now n is 6. Remember, this number is this number. Then we pick up our calculator and we solve it. In parentheses, -5 to the 5th power times 3 Our sixth term is negative 9,375. So what you're going to start seeing with geometric sequences is you get really big numbers or really small numbers. So we'll be working with some decimals and some fractions in the next couple examples, and it's really important that we know how to put them in our calculator correctly. Okay. So this example is a little tricky. So if you're like kind of tuning me out because you're finding this to be super easy, this is where I would definitely pay attention. Okay. So what we're asked to do here is determine R and A sub 1. We're really just going to find the R. I'll talk about how to find A sub 1, but just finding R is what this is about for the geometric sequence. So let's see what they give us. They give us the fourth term and they give us the 11th term. That's it. And they want us to find R. Okay. So this is using your algebra skills. Think back to Algebra 1, a lot of working with formulas. We have a formula that we are going to solve for R. We want R. R equals something. That's what we want. So to work with this formula and solve for R, we have to plug a number in for this variable, this variable, this variable, and this variable. There are 5 total variables. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have to plug into 4 of them and solve for the 5th. So we have to assign these 2 numbers. One of them is going to be A sub n, and one of them is going to be A sub k. It doesn't matter which one is which, honestly. Just one thing to think about is you're going to eventually subtract these 2 numbers right here. And isn't it easier to work with positive numbers? To me it is. So I will make A sub n my A sub 11. So I have 11 minus 4. So this is what I'm saying. I'm going to choose to put A sub 11 in for A sub n and A sub 4 in for A sub k. I'm going to be finding R in a minute. And then n minus k, remember, n is this number right here, so 11, and then k would be that subscript there. The only reason I chose those numbers to go in those places is so I got a positive number here. 100% could have switched those numbers. Okay, now let's put the actual numbers in. A sub 11 is 1/16. A sub 4 is negative 8. R is what we want to find, and we have 11 minus 4 up here. So now we've plugged into every spot except for R, and we're going to use our algebra skills to solve for R. Remember, opposite operations, move everything to the other side. What you do to one side, you have to do the other, all of that. Anybody have an idea of what we would do first to get the R by itself? Not distribute. What else? I heard other people say stuff first. We are going to subtract 11 minus 4. No, because you would have to have R to that power. So we're going to divide both sides by negative 8, guys. Okay, so that's going to cancel out the negative 8s. And 11 minus 4, I'm going to go ahead and do that step right there. And now I have to do 1/16 divided by negative 8. Remember, you have to put your fractions in parentheses. 1/16 divided by negative 8. Ew, yuck. Get a yucky decimal. Always try to change it to a fraction. Math, enter, enter. We're going to use that. Now we're almost there. Right now we have R to the 7th equals negative 1 over 128. We want R by itself. We have to get the 7 out of there. So think about what you guys do with smaller numbers, like x to the 3rd power equals 8. How would we solve for x here? Cube root. Whatever that number is, to undo it, you do that same number root. That's the opposite. Like x to the 2nd power, we would do square root, okay? So if we have R to the 7th power, we're going to do the 7th root of both sides. Thank goodness for calculators. So that's going to give me just R on this side. And now I have to just put that in my calculator. So this is where you need to watch. I'm going to teach you 2 things. first is how to do a seventh root. Okay, so just watch me for a second. If I go into my math menu, you can see a bunch of things in there. Number 5 is a root with an X there. We want that X to be a 7, okay? So to do that, you have to put the 7 on your screen first. So you type 7 and then math 5. And that will give you the 7th root. Okay? Now here's something else I'm going to show you. Like you're going to be typing -1 over 128 in here hypothetically, but there's a really nice feature on these calculators that will scoop up the most recent answer and drop it where your cursor is. I want that fraction to go right there. I don't feel like typing parentheses and all that stuff. So the way I can do that is using this ANS. See where it says ANS? That means answer. It's in blue. So I'm going to hit second ANS. And look what it does. It puts that word answer in where my cursor was. So what your calculator does is properly and perfectly steals that answer, the most recent answer on your screen, and it drops it in that spot. So now it's going to do the 7th root of -128. And then you hit enter, and you get -1/2. So R is -1/2. Okay. So fancy footwork with an algebraic formula, just remembering how to move everybody to the other side doing opposite operations, okay? And knowing how to use our calculator is really important. Did I have to use the second answer key? No, I could have typed it in, but this is a feature that we'll be using quite a bit. It's very helpful when you have like a really long decimal as an answer or like a fraction that you don't want to have to type all those buttons in. It's just a quick way of doing it. Yeah. To get the ANS in there. Okay, so I have this on my screen and I want to do this, the 7th root of it. So I hit 7, math 5. So I have the 7th root and I want that in there. So I hit second and then my negative button. Yep. All right. Let's look at the next question. Let me read. When a radioactive I only have 2 examples left, guys. When a radioactive substance decays, the amount remaining will form a geometric sequence when measured over constant intervals of time. The table shows the amount of an unknown substance initially and then again after 2 hours. Find the amounts left after 1 hour, 3 hours, and 4 hours. Round your estimate to the nearest gram. So we have time elapsed. When we start, we have this many grams of this substance, and then we know after 2 hours that's what's left. This is finding a middle number. Whenever you have to find a middle number, you want to use your geometric mean. Geometric mean, which is really simple. You just square root the product of those 2 numbers. 1320 times 384, and do it right in your calculator. So put your radical, your square root, 1320 times 384, and we get this number, and it's normal to get decimals and stuff. It already told us we're going to round to the nearest gram, so that would be 712. That number makes sense. It's in between those 2 numbers. Now, how are we going to find this number and this number? Anybody have an idea? Find R. Yep. Find R, and then you can just keep multiplying. So you can find R by doing 712 divided by 1320 or 384 divided by 712. It doesn't matter. Any 2 consecutive numbers, they have to be right next to each other, right to left. So 384 divided by 712 gives me, remember in this class we rounded 3 decimal places unless it tells you otherwise. So that's what made me choose that. And now I'm just going to do 384 times 0.539. So that would be 207. 207 times 0.539 gives me 112. Those numbers make sense. They're getting smaller. Okay? So to find a middle number, geometric mean. To find the next number, R. Okay, last question. Let's do a word problem. You are offered a starting salary for the first year with an annual increase of 5% per year. That means your salary will be 1.05 times what it was the year before. So the 1 comes in, so changing 5% to a decimal, 5% becomes 0.05. You just move your decimal point 2 places, percent to decimal. They did it for us, but I'm just explaining it. And then you want 1.05 because you want your whole salary, that's the 1, a whole, and another 5%. Okay? So that's your R. So A sub 1 is what I'm going to make my first year, and my R is 1.05. So I'm going to just plug that in, come up with my explicit formula. Since this was my first year, that's my K value is 1. That's how I know that's a 1. And now I can plug in my, what is it saying, 5th year. So I'm going to find a sub 5 by plugging a 5 in. So I'm going to do 1.05 to the power of 4 times 37,500. So in my 5th year, I would make $45,581, and it's money, so we would round to 2 decimal places. 48 cents. So guys, if your word problem is talk about something getting bigger, like your salary is growing, your R should be greater than 1. Okay? If you didn't put the 1 in front, your answer would be less than the first answer. It'd be really small. It'd be like $1,000 or something ridiculous, which wouldn't make sense. Okay? So if you're growing, your R is going to be greater than 1. That's called growth. And if your R is less than 1, that means it's decaying. Your numbers should be going down. Like you buy a car for $10,000, right when you drive it off the lot, it's now worth $9,985 or something. It always goes down, depreciates. Okay, so your R would be less than 1 in that situation. Nope. What would you expect to earn in your 5th year? I guess they could have used a different number, but they didn't. Okay, so homework. Take a second and write it. I know it's a lot of writing, but I just don't like to assign every single problem. So sometimes it looks crazy like that. You should be writing though. I'm going to start the homework with you. You don't want to hold your classmates up. Are you doing this work with me?
Yeah.
11 through 16. I'm going to do bunch with you. All right, number 1. All right, so number 1, is this geometric, yes or no? If so, give the R and the next 2 terms, okay? So if I do 1/2 divided by 1, I get 1/2. But if I multiply 1/2 by 1/2, I'm not going to get 1/3. This is not geometric. -6 divided by 18. Is that the same as 2 divided by -6 and so on? Yeah. We get an R of -3. Yes. -1/3. It's getting smaller, so we're going to get a fraction. And we want the next two numbers. So -2/3 times my R. And twice. So remember how to put fractions in our calculator? We have to use our parentheses. -2/3 times, in parentheses, -1/3. Math, enter, enter. And it's 2/9. I'm going to multiply by -1/3. 2/9 is already on my screen. Watch. All I have to do is hit times. It's going to do the most recent answer, 2/9 times -1/3. Math, enter, enter. Lots of calculator work. Okay. All right. Write the explicit formula, then find the first 5 terms. Explicit formula, A sub n, A sub 1, R, and minus my k value would be 1, because that's what we plugged in, the first term. There's my explicit formula. There's no simplifying or anything. That's it. Now to find the first 5 terms, you could use the formula, plug in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but there's a faster way. We already know the first term. They gave it to us. It's 8. And then how would I find the second term? Yeah, we multiply by R. 8 times -3 is -24. -24 times 3 is -72. Times -3 is 216. Times -3 is, what'd I do wrong? Did I do something wrong? Yeah, this is a positive. Sorry. And then that's negative. Good catch. Whenever your R is negative, your signs are going to go back and forth, positive, negative. So positive, negative. This one has to be positive. This one has to be negative. This one has to be positive. Next one will be negative. It will always do that when your R is negative. So, easy way to catch a mistake. A sub n equals our first term, our R, and since it was the first term, k is 1, there's your explicit formula. Easier than Friday's explicit formula because you don't have to do the distributive property and all that. You just plug in, you're done. There's my EF. Same thing that we did on the last problem. First term is given to us, and then we just keep multiplying. Now, instead of -1/2, which is totally fine, I'm going to use -0.5. Just faster. Positive, negative, positive, negative, positive. And these are your geometric mean formulas. Anytime you want the middle number, you multiply the square root. put the rest of the key up. Just making sure you guys have 11 and 12. Yep. Did you do the form? Mm-hmm. If you want to pull up your, what's it called? Canvas.